Up next, we react to the shocking fall of former University of Michigan head football coach Sherrone Moore. All right, coming back, Tunde. We saw last week, this past week, just breaking news, and it took like a real concerning turn for a while, where we had former University of Michigan head coach Chiron Moore. We get reports that he's fired from his job, and then we get reports that he's in police custody, things have unfolded since then. And essentially, what we've learned is that he was having an affair. He's a married guy, 3 kids. 39 years old, and Michigan is one of the biggest, most prominent head football jobs for football coaching jobs in the country. So he had this dream job, so to speak, married, 3 kids, and he was having an affair with a staff member, and was there's paying her a good amount, and stuff like that, and then. Ultimately, they had denied it. The university looked into it at one point over the summer. They had denied it, and so they didn't have the evidence they needed to act on it. Well, at some point in the last few days or a week or a couple of weeks, she changed her story and said, yeah, this did happen. And there's a lot going on as far as why that was and so forth. So she changed her story. He gets fired for cause, no buyout, no continuing money. You're out, you're done. And then he reacts. And apparently the reporting is that he goes to her house, kicks in the door, the person he's having the affair with, kicks the door in, holds a knife to his neck, saying, my blood is on your hands, you ruined my life, and so forth. So it was kind of and I'm sure many people are already familiar with kind of these broad strokes, but it took on at first it was kind of like, oh man, this guy threw it all away, ha ha ha. And then it was like, oh man, is this guy okay? Is this guy, like, what happened to this guy? So overall, it's just a shocking fall from a guy who goes from, again, one of the top 5 jobs you say in the country at 39 years old and so forth, to now probably will never work in that industry again, and kind of is going to have a difficult time, kind of regardless of what happens with law enforcement matter. It seems like he's going to have some consequences there as well, but just in terms of a career standpoint, put himself in a very difficult spot moving forward. I'll put it like that. So, what stands out to you about kind of the broad strokes of this, this story, Tunde?
Well, several things stand out that we'll talk about. The ultimate crash out, and I wouldn't want to say in history, but it's the ultimate crash out in I guess this recent moment. That's to me what stands out the most. Other things that stand out are how people are reacting. I'm finding that interesting because, again, there's a lot of confirmation bias, which we'll get into in terms of what we're seeing. But I just think that that my initial reaction is a combination of things. I would say the funny part, to just be honest about it, would be the crash out part. And I don't mean funny like I want to laugh at him and his family, but more of that's the stuff we can have in jest and people can kind of make light of whatever they want about that part.
Well, can I add something for that? Can I add something? Because you said something to me that was very interesting on this previously, and that with the crash out. And it's like, so he gets fired, and in his mind, according to the reporting, he's like, oh no, this girl has ruined my life.
Yeah.
So then he goes and kicks in her door and holds a knife to his neck. And it's like, well, actually, her telling you getting fired from Michigan didn't ruin your life, but it may have ruined your life by running and going and kicking into her door.
Yeah.
And the crash out part, basically, make long story short, then like I said, you threw this to me, like what he was afraid of happening when the initial round of stuff happening, of his life being ruined, so to speak, he may have actually brought to himself with the crash out, And so that to me was just like, when you said it, I'm like, oh man, that's...
It's the classic thing that befalls a lot of people, which is the thing you're most insecure about. You do something yourself to bring that on.
Okay.
So this guy probably insecure about losing.
All right, Anakin Skywalker. I said, okay, Anakin Skywalker, man. I'm gonna beat you to it because I know that's where you're going.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't, but we'll go there for sure and have some fun with it. But no. So if because what did Yoda say? The great Jedi philosopher. It was fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. So Sherrone Moore was somewhere on that spectrum, right? I think he was on the hate leads to suffering part when he broke into her house. So, but the other part besides the crash out part, that was one part of what I kind of this moment is making me see. But the other part I think is a bigger picture, maybe even a more important conversation that we can have as two men that are older than him. And I would speak for myself being in my late 40s, and you are still probably healthily within your mid 40s, even though
I'm still mid.
But you're like one tick on closer to me on the mid.
I'm getting to the precipice, and then I'll be going down.
You're what we learned in elementary school. If we had to round up, you'll be 50 because you're 46. You're past the 5.
Yeah.
So, but on a serious note for the audience, James is 46. I'm 47. I'll be 48 in 4 months. It's December. I'll be 48 in March. And so my point is that that's kind of one of the things I thought, oh man, this guy's like almost a decade younger than me. He's 39. It's an interesting place to be as a man at that age. And you said something to me that even reinforced it on a phone call, which was, had he been 10 years younger, had he been 29 and been some grad assistant coach, this also may not have played out in his life a similar way. So it's an interesting thing to now be a little bit older than a guy that's getting himself in this kind of trouble publicly. And then to realize, man, I'm middle aged, and this is kind of when he's at the age of when traditionally we used to hear about men having a midlife crisis. You know, a guy's married, he's got a few kids, he can't sit still, life's going good for him in his career. And all of a sudden, he freaks out and buys a convertible and starts chasing 18-year-olds behind his wife's back. And this one may have been in front of his wife's. But the point is, so that to me is another part of this conversation that I don't see too many people having. That to me is just interesting, which is, he's going the direction of a lot of men have gone, maybe not most, but a lot. And I think that part's getting lost in the other parts, the parts that people want to look at, like, oh, the racial stuff that he was with white chicks or whatever that people.
That stuff is a little more salacious, though. Like I'm sure you get more hits if you tie this somehow to this.
Yeah, but that's the part that's less interesting.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because the crash out kind of removes all of the speculation from how things would have happened differently. Correct. If he was, if he was white or if she was black, or if it wasn't the cross racial stuff. Like once he crashed out, like it kind of was like, okay, well, that part, if you're in jail for a couple of days, then you're going to lose your job. Like that's not a thing. But to me, kind of in a similar vein to what you were talking about. What stands out to me here is really it's kind of the in-between phase. Like he's still like at 39, you kind of still are young enough as a man to kind of make some bad decisions. Like where I guess reckless decisions. When you get in your 40s, 50s, some guys still make bad decisions then, but most guys like mellow out a little bit more as they get to those. And a lot of times you don't get to these amazing dream job opportunities until you are at that phase, like you're 45, 50, 60, and then it's like you're less likely to be. Now, some guys, they'll do it at any age, anytime, and then some guys wouldn't do it at any age, at any time, but like kind of, I'm talking about median here. So he's at the age where he still kind of has a little bit of that reckless 20s, 30s recklessness, but he had gotten far enough in his career where all of his decisions really mattered. And that's what my point with the if he was like a 29-year-old grad assistant or a 25-year-old grad assistant, he wouldn't have felt like he ruined his life if this happened. You're like, oh, okay, I'll just go get a grad assistant job somewhere else. Like nobody's going to know about it because nobody cares if a grad assistant gets caught doing something. It's like, all right, yeah, you're out. You'll get picked up somewhere else. No big deal. So he had gotten successful enough. He had enough time to get so successful to get to the top of his profession, yet he still had the recklessness in him. So it was kind of like stuck in this in between, kind of like what you're saying with the midlife crisis, where he had the kinds of consequences he was facing were very serious versus, like, again, if you're 25 years old and this happens, it's just something different. So to me, that's really what stood out is this, as far as how, he's stuck in between. And then now, he with a high profile position, he really, he really put himself in a situation where what he feared is going to happen. One other thing I want to ask you though, and that is, like there's, I've seen guys talking about this also, just with like there's game that should be learned here that maybe he missed out on, because, and I've even heard like this is I've heard it in family settings, like with men in my family and so forth, but all friends and all that, where it's like anytime a man, of a certain level, once you get to a certain level of prominence, if you are dealing with a woman who has a lot less to lose than you've given her all the power. And so, and even, I think there's a story that floats around in college football, even, where Nick Saban has this quote. And again, there's denials in terms of this, but in him talking to his players when he was coaching either LSU or Alabama, that he said, like, again, you can't deal with women that have a lot less to lose than you. And then the joke was basically that if I'm doing anything, it's going to be with Hillary Clinton because not because I'm in love with her, but because at least she has more to lose than me. So what are your thoughts on kind of the violations of the game, man, and the violations of the code here that this represents? Because she was working for him in the university department, but as soon as he messed with her, actually he worked for her because she could end him at any moment by saying, "Hey, this dude is dealing with me in ways that I know are against policy." What are your thoughts on that?
I'll give you my thought, but first I have to get rid of this taste of bile in my mouth from the vomiting in my mouth of visualizing you banging Hillary Clinton.
Not me. And again, that's to make the
I'm not
point
sure
of who's a person that has a lot more to lose than a football, the biggest prominent football coach.
I'm not sure if I feel more sorry for me for having to see this in my mind or the face you have, the look you have on your face while you're doing it that I'm visualizing. So I
wasn't going that far. I think the point is better made without visualizing it.
That'll remain in my head. But no, no, I think, look, this is where we go from. I think it's easy for all of us, especially as men, to think about, start doing the whole, well, what would I would have done this, or you should have done that, or you should have done this. Obviously, this guy wasn't thinking straight. Let's be honest, as a type of men we are. The first thing is he's responsible for cheating on his wife first.
Yeah.
Second, then he's a dumbass for, pooping where he eats. Like you said, third, somebody that's a subordinate to him at the workplace. So there's all these things we can rattle off. And you make some good points there, because as I'm thinking about when you're talking, I'm also thinking about at my age, I've had friends like him, people I've known personally, whether they're friends or not, meaning just like people, whether it was the workspace, whether it was friends I had from college, meaning in our 20s, 30s, and then into your 40s, some men do fall off the kind of, they fall by the wayside on the journey in examples like this. Some might be work things. I've know guys that have been caught embezzling money from their workplace, all that. Others, it's this kind of behavior at home. And so, and like you said, that then there's other guys like us that are more measured and just kind of, able to navigate the journey without these kind of dramas. And so I do think that there's a lot to be said with that. I think sometimes some of us men are fortunate that we might make some little mistakes when we're younger, where we got kind of a slap on the wrist and then we understood, I better not do this again.
Before you had a ton to lose. That's the thing, is like before you had a ton to lose.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you get scared straight in a sense, versus other guys that don't. And, they might get the slap on the wrist or get caught, but then they keep going. Like we had the show last week about, the documentary about some famous people that have had that, where they just keep going once they're allowed to. So, my understanding is this coach had, this isn't the first recorded incidence of whether attempted or full-on infidelity. So obviously this is part of who he was as a person, looking outside of his marriage. And that's what I'm saying. Like, this is obviously he got himself in this position. And I think that the crash out thing, I'll end on this, is that's where he hurt himself. And images are so important. The fact that he behaved this way and then was arrested meant that when they did his arraignment in front of the judge on Zoom, he was in that all white getup in that little room, which gives us all, he'd have been better off in an orange jumpsuit, because that white thing in that little room, that made it look like, okay, this guy's crazy. And I think you mentioned something on a recent show about the former NFL player Ray Rice, about how when it first came out that he committed some domestic abuse, kind of public was kind of half, okay, maybe, whatever. The minute that video came out of him and his wife in the elevator and him knocking her out, that was it. And so I think there is some, or like Diddy with the Cassie Hotel video, like there's something about images that once we all saw that image of this guy in that white outfit, when he's talking to the judge, I think that's That's the part that ends it, because it's like, man, this guy can't be in front of young men and kids and trusted to be responsible if he's breaking into somebody's house, putting a friggin' scissors to his neck, talking about he's going to kill himself. So, that's what makes this a more unique than just, oh, he was chasing white chicks, the stuff I see online.
Yeah. I mean, and like, I feel bad for the guy, in the sense, again, like, I don't want anybody's life come crumbling down, but, hopefully, people can learn from it, like that people that could use that message, or use that lesson, could learn from it, because a lot of it did come back to kind of the where he was reckless or kind of shooting a little too fast from the hip, so. But I think we can wrap from there. We appreciate everybody joining us on this episode of Call Like I See It. Subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review it, tell us what you think, send it to a friend. Till next time, I'm James Keys.
I'll say this, your pun was intended. He did shoot too fast from the hip. I can't believe you didn't recognize you said that. I'm Tunde Ogunlana, and I'll just say this for the YouTube audience. It is the third day of Hanukkah, so I'm wearing my Hanukkah shirt. So next week we'll have my Christmas sweater. So just want to make sure I'm getting everybody in for the holidays.
Cool. All right. All right. We'll appreciate it, right, for joining us. We'll talk soon.